All right, well, I want to thank all of you guys for coming. And I want to tell you about a problem I've been solving as part of a class that I'm taking at Malone University. It's a Christian university in Ohio, and when I was in management in the Ohio areas when I started my affiliation with them. And so we're going to tell you about the obtain process. This is a problem-solving methodology. It was created by a guy named Antonio Weiss. He wrote a book called Key Business Solutions, Essential Problem-Solving Tools that Every Manager Needs to Know. And this is the process. You outline the question, you break down the issues, test the hypothesis, analyze the problem, imagine the solution, and then notify the stakeholders. And I've already passed you guys out a copy of it in graphical format so you'll be able to follow along. But this is a copy of the handout that I gave you. And it explains in a graphical format how the obtain process works. So you first outline the question, determine what it is that you want to achieve, and then the next three steps work in a circular pattern where you break down the issues and you test the hypothesis, you analyze the problem, you test, you imagine the solution, and you test. And if your problem survives all of that, then you have a viable solution that your hypothesis has survived. It's a good possible solution. You notify the stakeholders that that's what you intend to implement. So my problem statement is, how can we increase the level of active participation in the LIDEA Professional Development Committee of LIDEA members 25% during a year? And as you guys know, LIDEA is the statewide institution for economic development. It's the nonprofit civic organization for economic development professionals, which stands for Louisiana Industrial Development Executives Association, which is why we call it LIDEA, because that's a mouthful. The problem statement worksheet is where you analyze and you ask a number of questions about your problem to make sure that you properly framed the problem and you really thought about the problem. Because one of the things Albert Einstein always said, and he's a pretty smart guy, is that if I had an hour to solve an important problem, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes developing the solution. So this is about defining the problem. We're going to look at each of these points slide by slide. So who are the key decision makers? The key decision makers are the president of LIDEA, the chair of the Professional Development Committee, which is myself, the co-chair, and the executive immediate past president of LIDEA, and the chair or executive director of the program at LSU Executive Education. The criteria for success. Okay, and here we're defining success is that we have more members involved and a more even distribution of the workload among those members. Currently, I can attest that too much of the workload is being handled by the chair. Moi. So this is a problem that all committees have in most nonprofit organizations. So it's a problem that's worthy of having a look at. How do you solve it? What is the context of the work? Okay, well, in this committee, as a part of LIDEA, we have been expanding the number of programs, and the program, as it matures, one of the key elements of our program is we administer the Certified Louisiana Economic Developer Program at LSU Executive Education. So we certify economic developers as being experts in the field. And so that program, is, as it matures, some of the older graduates are interested in new classes to be able to take. So we have to develop new curriculum, and then we have to make sure the existing curriculum is kept up to date with best practices in the industry, which are constantly evolving. We also have a couple other things where we're trying to get funding for the program that need to be administered, and where we do training for elected officials to teach them what their role in economic development is throughout the state. So those are some of the goals of the committee. What is the scope of the work? Okay, so there's a couple things we want to do. We want to get more of the existing members of LIDEA to be members of the committee, so we have more people to do the work. And we want to have more people that are calling themselves members of the committee actually involved and doing something. What we're not trying to do, and it's not part of the scope of the work, is to increase the membership of the organization LIDEA overall at this time. I'm not saying that that might not be a result of what we're doing. If we improve our efforts, more people will want to be a part of what we're doing, I'm quite certain, but that's not a scope of work for this problem. What are the expected end products? Okay, well, what we hope to achieve is to have one member of the committee as a subcommittee chair of each of the main objectives of LIDEA, Professional Development Committee. And so our committee's 5 key objectives are oversight of existing curriculum, development of new curriculum, funding, training elected officials, and promoting the Certified Louisiana Economic Developer Program. Now, this is a question that's part of the ATTAIN process that I didn't get into, okay? And the reason is because I kind of tackled this problem on my own. So the question is, who are the proposed problem-solving team members? So since this was an individual problem that I was taking on, and I didn't do it in a team format, I just kind of took it on myself as a case study project. I didn't engage a lot of other people. But normally, it is an important part of an organizational, as we were doing earlier here today, strategic planning process. So again, here's a slide on the ATTAIN process. Now we've outlined the question. The next step is to break down the issues. And so to do that, what we did is we created an issue tree. This is also another technique that comes from Antonio Weiss's book, where you identify what are some key issues that are related to solving this problem, and then you break it down into sub-issues until it can't really be broken down anymore. And you make sure that you've identified all of the issues that you'll have to overcome in order to be able to execute the problem. And really, I'm explaining the process more so than taking you through exactly all of those issues. The next part is to analyze the problem. We did a couple of things to make sure that we properly analyzed the problem. The first thing we did was a literature review to make sure that we looked at a lot of different information of people who tried to solve similar problems. And this is a copy of all the different books that I read in order to make sure that I had some of the best thoughts. One of them I really liked was General McChrystal's information from his book, Team of Teams, New Rules of Engagement for a Complex World. It's actually not a bad read, you know. I mean, for a general, he's actually a pretty good writer. And he gives you a lot of anecdotal stories of how he solved some of the problems that they had over there. Another thing that we did was we just executed a good old-fashioned brainstorming session, okay, where we threw all the ideas up on the board, and whether the idea was good or bad or indifferent, we threw all the ideas up first, and then we whittled them down later. After doing that, then we developed a hypothesis tree, which is a hypothesis is just a possible solution. I hypothesize that this solution will probably lead me to the end result that I want, which was solve my problem statement. And in the process of doing that, we came up with 3 key hypotheses and some supporting logic that supported each of those. And then we imagined a solution. And so we took our hypothesis and we wanted, the ones that we identified in our hypothesis tree, we want to identify, what, of all those possible solutions, which one is the best solution? Okay, and so in order to whittle it down, I utilized this technique. It's called the paired choice matrix. It's a great way for selecting a final solution for a problem. What you do is you just compare the problems against one another. So if I had problem B versus problem C, which one would I pick? You know, and I just went through it. I said D versus E, D versus F. And then whoever gets the most votes for being the best solution, after you compare them all against one another, utilizing this, is your final solution. And so after going through that process, we determined that solution E received the most votes, which was to create subcommittees for each goal. So the 5 objectives that LIDEA's Professional Development Committee needs to achieve, we wanted to install one member to be in charge of each goal, and then a subcommittee of other members to work underneath that person. The next step after that is to notify the stakeholders. this may be a little bit small print from where you're sitting, but we restate the action plan. We restate the problem. This is the action plan. We restate the problem, and then we give it some context, and then we have action steps for each of the 5 goals. So action step number 1 for marketing and promotion, and we have several different goals that we want to achieve that strategy, okay? And then we have the person who's responsible, when it's going to start, when it's going to end, and then on the end we have some notes as to little things that you need to think about and be aware if you're going to execute that particular goal. This sounds familiar from what we worked on earlier today. Okay. Now, in your action plan in the real world, nothing ever goes perfect. So you have to think about the issues related to, if this is going to be your action plan to implement this solution, you have to think about what can go wrong. And that's why you have a contingency plan. Here I only identified a couple of issues. I took what I thought were the prioritized biggest issues. In this case, what would happen to the committee if I quit? You know, what would be the contingency plan to make sure that everything went okay? And the other one is the director of LSU Executive Education, if she left, that would be a real problem. So we're probably the bottlenecks in the system, so we needed to come up with a contingency plan in the event that happened. And so the last part of the obtain process is after you notify the stakeholders and you identify an action plan and you set up dates when it's going to happen, then you have to manage the stakeholders and manage the team and make sure that it's implemented properly. And so there's a lot of different ways to do that, okay? And my favorite is the McKinsey 7S model. And the McKinsey 7S model is also mentioned in the book that I was talking about, but of course it belongs to McKinsey. And it divides your overall mission into this structure so that there's hard things, and what they mean by hard is these are things that you can really get your hands on and manipulate. And then the soft things are things that are more difficult to control. But you want to identify what they are, and so that as you're implementing your action plan, that you make sure that you're considering all of these different areas: the strategy, structure, systems, and then the skills and style and staff. You know, so for example, in the subcommittees, I want to make sure that the skills of the staff that is part of that subcommittee are aligned with what the goals of that committee are. Otherwise, they may be better served to be in another subcommittee, right? Okay. And that is pretty much my problem. Thank you very much. Now let's just hope that. Oh, you know what? Yeah, questions. I am supposed to have a question and answer session. Thank you.
Question. Is it off? The turn off again, or you just that's it?
No, that's just the end.
Oh, okay. I see the lines. Is that supposed? Lines intentional? Is so like is there a connection between the hard ass structure and then the soft ass?
That's right. Yeah, that's the whole idea. Is that all of these are connected to one another. You know, and it's not really hard to see that.
Yeah.
And then the shared values is the center part. You know, like Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind, right? So that's where your shared values come from. You had a question, Jen?
I don't know if it is a question. I see it says hard S and like it's a large S and a small S. Does that mean anything? Like?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That these soft S's are harder to control.
No. What is it?
It's the 2 S's together.
It's supposed to be S apostrophe S.
Oh, it's supposed to be
hard S's.
They're all S's. So these are the soft S's.
Okay.
And these are the hard S's.
Okay. Okay. I thought it. Okay. Thank you.
That doesn't sound right, does it?
It's supposed to not sound good.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much.